Some folks give up everything for what they believe in, and it never makes the headlines until it does, in the weirdest way. I remember this one teacher in our little town of Willow Creek, Sarah Jenkins, a widow who'd pour her soul into those kids at the rundown elementary school, scraping by on nothing but heart. She sold her late husband's ring, the one thing left from their 20 years together, buy a stack of books for her classroom, figuring no one would notice. But boy, did that spark a fire nobody saw coming. It started quiet, like most heartbreaks do. Sarah sat at her kitchen table that night, the ring catching the dim light from the bulb overhead, her hands shaking as she whispered to David, her husband, who'd passed too soon from that damn accident on the farm roads. "Forgive me," she said, slipping it into her pocket, knowing the pawn shop downtown would turn it into cash for those beat-up shelves in her room, cracked covers, pages falling out, not enough for all the eager little faces staring up at her each day. She'd begged the school board, written emails that went unanswered, even stood up at town meetings where folks nodded politely, but whispered later about budget realities and how she was stirring trouble. Her colleagues admired her from afar, but up close, they'd mutter she was trying too hard, drawing eyes to the cracks in our community's shiny facade. And then there were the locals, these guys led by Tom Harlan, no relation to anyone nice, a pack of bitter types who'd hang around the diner, mocking her for being the poor widow teacher, sneering that maybe she should sell that ring if she cared so much. It stung, not just the words, but the way they made her feel small, like her grief was fair game because she dared to fight for those kids from the wrong side of the tracks, kids whose parents worked the fields or the factories, overlooked just like her classroom. Tom and his crew had their reasons, twisted as they were jealousy over the attention she got, maybe, or resentment, because her pushes for funding exposed how they'd skimmed town resources for their own pet projects, like that fancy park no one used. So when she finally pawned the ring for a measly $400, enough for 20 new books, the kids lit up like Christmas, touching the covers like gold, asking where they came from, and she just smiled through the ache, saying, "From love, honey, from love." But word spread fast in Willow Creek, and those bullies smelled blood. They slashed her tires one afternoon, left a note saying, "Books won't fix what's broken," laughing as they drove off, figuring she'd crumble. She didn't. Not right away, but that night, alone, she broke, whispering to David's photo, wondering if it was all worth it, feeling exposed, humiliated, like she'd stolen from her own memories. Across town, though, in this smoky bar where the road warriors hung out, a biker club folks whispered about, tough guys with hearts buried under leather, Jack Harlan overheard Tom bragging about teaching that meddlesome teacher a lesson. Jack's jaw tightened. See, Sarah had tutored his nephew years back, no charge, pulling the kid through tough times when his folks were falling apart. That sparked something in him, a quiet fury, and he made the call engines would rumble before dawn. Next morning, Sarah unlocks her door, steps in, and freezes. Her desks aren't empty. They're filled with these burly bikers in vests and boots, patches glaring, but their eyes respectful, almost soft. Jack stands up front, nods at the shelves now overflowing with fresh books, notebooks, paints. "Heard what you gave up," he rumbles, voice like gravel but kind. "No one's gonna mock a woman fighting for these kids, not on our watch." Sarah's knees buckle, tears blurring everything. "Why them? Why now?" "Because you gave my nephew hope when we couldn't," Jack says low. And just like that, the tide turns. Her classroom feels like a fortress, protected by the unlikeliest guardians. But Tom and his crew? They didn't back off easy. A week later, as kids spill out, those guys pull up, boots thumping, voices booming. "Nice haul. Miss Jenkins hoed you charm for that. Your biker boyfriends?" One leans in, smirking. "Think they'll stick around? They'll tire of playing hero, and it'll be you alone again." The kids freeze, wide-eyed, Sarah's face burning with shame, her voice shaking as she tells them to leave, but before fear grips tight, that deep growl echoes, motorcycles thundering in, chrome flashing like lightning. Jack leads, dismounts slow, pulling off gloves with a snap. "Afternoon, fellas," he says even, but his shadow swallows their smirks. "Got a lot to say to a teacher, huh?" Does she look amused? Tom stammers. "Just joking." But Jack steps closer, whispering, "If you touch her, these kids, or her name again, remember this roar." Engines rev in unison, shaking the ground. The bullies scramble, tires squealing, gone like smoke. The kids stare in awe, one little girl clutching her book tighter, whispering, "They saved us." Jack kneels to her level. "No one bullies your teacher, not while we're here." And Sarah? For the first time in years, she feels seen, not small dignity creeping back like dawn light. Town buzzed. Split down the middle. Some called Sarah a hero. Others whispered she was tangled with outlaws, bringing trouble. Parents argued at church suppers, anonymous notes to the board demanding she go. It hurt deep. She never wanted scandal, just books for kids who deserved better. Then the vandalism, a shattered window, chalk scrawling "Biker's whore." She erases it quick, smiling for the kids. But inside, her sanctuary's cracked. Jack shows up, studies the mess. They won't quit till faced not with fists, with truth. 2 days later, board meeting. Sarah sits clammy, accused of disruption, gangs around kids. She falters, but doors swing open. Jack and his crew walk in, calm as stone. Gasps ripple. "Not here to threaten," Jack says steady. "Here for truth. This woman sold her ring for books, got mocked for it. We stood up. That's honor, not crime." Silence falls, Sarah's eyes welling, then a tiny voice. Little Mia, stepping up with her worn book. "She gave us stories, stays late, makes us feel smart's the best." Other kids chime in, voices tumbling. "She bought my lunch, told me I'm brave." Parents shift, touched. The board adjourns uneasy, but the whispers soften, nods replace sneers. Weeks pass. Sarah thinks it's over till one night. Locking up, Tom steps from shadows, hissing, "Safe cause of your friends? They won't always be here." Her pulse races, but she lifts her chin. "I don't need them to know I'm strong." Engines growl right then, lights sweeping, bikes forming a wall. Jack dismounts. "You were saying?" Tom flees cursing. Later, a box on her desk, a silver ring, engraved for stories untold. Note saying sacrifice plants seeds. She slips it on, tears falling, but smiling. It's not David's, but it carries that giving spirit. Spring hits. Open house overflows. New shelves, art corners built by volunteers, bikes lined outside, bikers mingling with folks, kids laughing in oversized helmets. The principal leans in. "You brought dignity here." Sarah nods. Wasn't alone. One Saturday, she hops on Jack's bike, wind whipping, feeling alive again, unburdened. At a ridge overlook, he says soft, "Road doesn't erase pain, but shows life beyond." She smiles through tears, and worth fighting for. Months on, her classroom's legendary, not just for books, but the story of a widow's sacrifice blooming into something bigger, guarded by road angels. Bullies vanished, town's respect grew, engines rumbling past as promise. Sarah stands at her door one sunset, touching the ring. "Thanks, David, your love lives in them now." Sacrifice feels like loss at first, but it seeds greatness, turns enemies to allies. What do you think, were the bikers heroes or trouble? Was Sarah right to accept their help, or did it stir more drama? Drop a comment. Share your take on justice in small towns. Hit like if this hit home. Subscribe for more real-life twists. Let's talk.